February 19th, 2020 at 6:30 PM. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kenneth Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Walking in the door.
here she comes, Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't sure if you were here, so
So council, tonight's work session topic is vote required for taxes. And before the discussion starts, I just want to share one of the training, newly elected officers training concepts that was passed on to me when I first got on city council years ago, was that when you look at making sea changes in policies or regulations, that you should kind of ask yourself, what's the problem and how is a change going to address that? And so in terms of taxes, taxation is a council authority and responsibility. And there's also a lot of nuances in the different types of taxes and how they're laid out in the city code and state laws, and they extend, in fact, beyond our own city code. And there's also connections between bond issues and what the citizens vote on, and then the taxes, the revenues that the city council raises to pay those bonds, and basically the interaction between those and the general day-to-day finances of the city that keeps the ship floating. So, the representative process is that council's elected to represent citizens. And I know we've had some struggles in the past few years with the council adopting tax increases and then having those overturned by referendums. And even I've suggested on a couple of items that maybe when we take things to the public, that there's a little more transparency in what that funding is going for, or on a case-by-case basis. For example, if, for example, we have a big funding shortfall in the schools and one in the hospital, then maybe there's a place for going out to the citizens and proposing a vote and an election on a specific tax. And even that legality really hasn't been researched by the attorneys and so forth. But anyway, I think we've been through a tough economic cycle the last 3 or 4 years, and I think council's done a pretty good job of balancing keeping reserves on hand, providing services of the city, and financing those without significant adjustment in tax. So I thought I would just put that on the table to start the discussion and open it up to council. So basically the question is, in a consideration for taxes and I guess putting part of that decision-making in the citizens' hands, what are some of council's thoughts?
Just a quick comment.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, what's in our letter here, email received from a citizen. So if it's not signed, I wouldn't put it on the agenda. I mean, we take input from our citizens, and when it has to do with something that is going to affect our budget and other things, then it's, I would like to know who it came from. So
We removed that. I think Susan removed it from an email. It was a named individual, which I'd be happy to share.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
this isn't secret society. If you've got an opinion, I'm not arguing against the opinion, but I think you should have a name on it.
Yeah, and I'll just say for council's benefit too, I noticed there's a correspondence in the package that actually wasn't addressed to council, and I'll try to work with the clerk and manager when the agendas are put together that correspondence is addressed to council and received in a timely manner, so.
So I guess,
Councilman Guard, and then
Yeah,
Councilman.
I'd like to be in opposition to the motion to put any change in taxation up to a vote of the people. It's kind of an onerous process that is with public input built into stuff now. We're elected by the people to do the business of the people, and if we give up the right to basically balance their budget and figure out what we're doing, we're kind of tying our hands. If there's an input process when we talk about taxation changes, there's plenty of process for public input then. If we can't sell it well enough, then we can expect to be overturned in a citizen's initiative, and that's all fine. That's part of the process. But to say that we can't do any taxation change without an approval vote from the citizens who elected us to do their business just makes the whole process much longer and much more onerous. If we have budgetary shortfalls we need to do things in, we have no elections coming up in the future, we have to have a special election to do this. I don't see that it does us any good at all. I think we have plenty of safeguards now as it is. So I'm in opposition to the idea.
Councilman, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up? After?
I'll let others speak first.
Okay, Councilman Schaefer, welcome back.
Thanks. It's nice to be back. I agree with Councilman Guard in that I'm not inclined to vote to change the tax process, just because it reduces the flexibility of the city to respond to if there is a budget gap, that comes up, and in the short term being able to respond or have all of the paths open to us to balance the budget. As Councilman Guard stated, there's already infrastructure in place for the community to come back if they don't approve of the taxes that are passed. And there's also ample opportunity for input along the way to when we pass the taxes. So I think it would just tie our hands more than they already are tied. And I think it would also get complicated with property tax and raising mill rates, and that could be a whole can of worms as well. I'm not in favor of changing the code for this.
Councilman Jones?
Well, I was trying to give everybody else a chance to speak on it before I took my bite, but I'm the one who wanted this put into a work session, and I think that you guys are exactly right. It's going to tie the hands of the council, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. Oftentimes we have council seats that are run unopposed. We have breakdowns in the process, as we've seen the last few years, and we have community members who feel the need to pull out ballot initiatives or referendums. And, we've been running the town off referendum for like 10 years now, since I was in high school. That's been the way it's worked, and it's just, we can continue down that road if you want, but I think we need to rein in the spending. We need to rein in let's do a new tax every year. Every year I've been on council, it's, what new tax can we raise now? Oh, let's talk about revenue. Oh, let's talk about taxes, this tax, that tax. And I just, frankly, I'm a little sick of it. And I think that the voters should get a say, especially when they don't really get a say when the seats are run unopposed.
Councilman Baylor?
Well, that in itself is kind of a say, isn't it? That they don't care enough. I mean, really. And I appreciate all of you stepping up, serving. I mean, I'm not getting paid a dime for this, just like the rest of you. I'm with you on the raising the taxes, and I'm with you on trying to keep staff down, and I think we did a pretty good job this year. But I don't think we can tie the hands of council by not having the ability to tax. I don't think any of us like to do it, but sometimes you just have to. I mean, there's options out there. It's, we are going to have discussions, hopefully, with our manager. She's just here, and we've talked about this. Do we need all the staff that we have? We don't really know that for sure. Maybe we do. In fact, that was a question I was going to ask you tonight. And staff, we've kind of gotten back to our winters. Are we able to handle the snow adequately with the people we have, or could we, go less one out? I know I'm getting off the subject, but that ties into taxes if we need more money to pay these people. So that goes back to what you're saying is making cuts, but we just can't generically say, all right, we're going to cut 2 positions to save X amount of dollars. We got to be surgical about it. So while I appreciate the thoughts on this, and I kind of agree to it at a point, but I don't think we should tie the hands of this council or future councils. And I do think there's plenty of time for people to speak up. And quite frankly, if you don't like it, we have the referendum process. And we could even take this to the sale of land. We've had several land sales that got turned back. Are we going to do every land sale by vote? You know, we do the best we can. And so I'm not in favor of putting forward something that would tie the hands of council as far as raising taxes. But I understand the sentiment, believe me.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I can appreciate all of those thoughts from those who have spoken before me. I guess I've got several thoughts on it. I don't necessarily see it tying the hands of council per se, because there always is the initiative and referendum procedures that the public can go through. If we can't make a case for something that we're doing for one of these taxes that makes sense to enough people where they couldn't get enough signatures for a referendum, then let it go to a referendum. I don't necessarily consider the way we've been running the city by referendum just because we've had a few referendums. That's the procedures that we have is referendums and initiatives. If we're really going to be run by referendum or initiative, then we don't need to be sitting here. The council could have a monthly vote, and the manager can have a monthly vote on what
Paid
the things
mayor.
are. But that's not what we're all about. We need to make our decisions. My concern, I guess, with putting generically out every tax issue to the public for voting is that just the concept of it, if people aren't informed of what it's all about, the generic reply is always no to any taxes. I mean, that's the way I feel too. But if you don't inform yourself, which, quite frankly, how many of our public are actually informed about the details of a process? Like you say, we have our meetings, and people can come comment and appreciate those that do, but we don't really get a lot of opinion until something tragic comes up. So my concern is that if those go to a vote and they're voted no, then our recourse is fees and property tax. And I don't want to put the burden on the local property tax or property owners. I want to spread that out to everybody. And that's what I think we've been trying to do. A couple of those have been shot down through referendum, and I appreciate that. And we go forward, but I don't want to just generically throw everything to the public for a vote. That's not why they voted for us, unopposed or not. We need to make the decisions the best we can and then support those. I think that's part of the problem that has been in the past, why referendums have passed or failed, is council has sit back and not supported our decisions. If we make a decision and we believe in that decision, then we should be supporting that in the referendum vote. So I'm opposed, I guess, in the end, to putting generically out everything regarding taxes to the voters before we make our decision on it. Number one, because there is that referendum and initiative procedure that if it needed to, you know, if we were just being belligerent and taxing willy-nilly, then there is that procedure for the public to go to, and that, again, I want to spread the burden, and I don't want to put that burden all on the property tax holder. So I don't support putting everything to a vote.
I know we have Councilman Guard online. Did we have anyone else that called in?
I think we're all here.
We're all here.
Okay, yeah, I thought I heard the phone twice, but that might have been when you dialed in, so. Okay. Councilman Jones.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to open this up to the audience, see if there's anybody else that has comments on this, since it is a workshop.
Any objection, council? Okay, anyone in the public that would like to testify is welcome to share your thoughts. No.
You know how much I dislike sharing my thoughts.
Better say your name so we know you.
I have to now. Barb Jewell, mile 2.2 Whiteshed Road. As always, I appreciate the thoughtful conversation and looking at it from so many different perspectives. And transparency and decision-making is always a critical piece of democracy. So I appreciate that. I agree that it is not a good idea to put all tax issues before the public for a vote, for all of the reasons that each one of you identified. I, as a citizen, certainly count on you guys to have more information than I do about these matters. That's what we elected you for. If we could all do it ourselves, we wouldn't need a council. And you have access to information that many people don't. You have access to experts that many of us don't, even those of us who do pay attention and read as much as we can, by nature of your position. And so I think that I certainly count on you to be the ones to make that decision. And if there is a sense that there are too many referendums, it may be that there need to be better ways to communicate with the public and listen to the public. And I think that the other thing that didn't get mentioned, I was very surprised it didn't, is there's a great expense to putting all of those to the public. There's a cost to holding a vote. There's a cost to holding an election that might outweigh any gains with this kind of thing. So again, I appreciate the conversation, and I do not think this would be a good way to make decisions in Cordova. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, whether it's a referendum process, which essentially results in a special election, if it's out of cycle, that can cost a lot, and so can an election. So.
Hello, William Deaton, 524 2nd Street. I was the person who wrote that piece of correspondence. I don't know why my name was not listed there, but I'm happy to own up to that. I'm not ashamed of my opinion whatsoever. I support this wholeheartedly. I think that we as the citizens should know what we're being taxed on, and if we don't know what we're being, like when I went through the code and I saw the various taxes, I had no idea. I was shocked by some of the stuff that, I mean, we have taxes at the DMV that the city gets from, and I had no idea. So I look at it more as an educational opportunity. I don't think these should be held at special elections whatsoever, because this should not be costing the city. But at the regular election in the March, I think it's important that we have a say. But we do have a say, as you have all mentioned. We can come to the council, we can share our opinions. There's the referendum or ballot initiative, and that's perfectly fine. So this is up to you guys, but I would encourage you to consider, if it's not every tax, perhaps it's sales tax. And if you decide to increase sales tax, that the citizens will vote on that. Just an idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just hang on a second, if you wouldn't mind commenting.
Council.
So I guess I appreciate you coming forward, but I also think it's your responsibility to dig in and get educated on what these taxes do for the community. You know, that's just as important. Where are these tax dollars going? I mean, they've helped provide you with a good education. I hope you got a good education.
Yes.
There's a college there, there's paved roads, there's swimming pools, there's all these things that we are required to provide as a community and a city. And that's just as important to know where those taxes are being spent, because if they're being spent foolishly, then we want to know and we will act. And that's what we've been looking at. But so far, my personal opinion, I haven't found a spot where we can limit what we spend out. So you got to look at both sides of the issue. So, but thank you for your input, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So council, Vice Mayor Meyer.
I guess I'll just put my input. I agree with a lot that has been said today. I think the burden would fall on to the powers that council would have access to, which would probably be property tax fees and having to cut down services. And I think that we need to be able to work within the powers that we have by being elected and this duty that we have hold in these seats. One thing that I think is coming up a lot is communication to the citizens at whole about how taxations, what's being taxed, why they're being raised, or why new ones are being implemented. And I think as a city and as council, we could do a much better job of that. So I think, to me, that's kind of the underlying issue right now, and not about whether voters should be going to the voting box and voting each time. I think that puts a burden on the citizens. I think they're going to have to feel like they have to really put in a lot of time on how to cast their votes. If there's more than just seats being on there or one issue that council decides to put on there, someone puts on there, I think the election could be a very big, long list of things that citizens have to vote on and feel comfortable going to the voter box, being prepared. But I think we could do a better job communicating to citizens. I think that's kind of the underlying issue.
Councilman Baylor?
I guess I will say that I think council has made a step in the right direction in hiring our new manager, who actually has a stake in this community, and we, to my knowledge, have never had that. Well, I guess we did. Scott Hahn did buy a house here. So we're going to have our debates and our arguments, and we're going to be looking at the budgets. But in the end, if we have to do it, we will have to do it, whatever we got to do. So thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I guess one more thing I forgot to mention earlier that I'd like to add is that, there's a lot of burnout in the community right now with how often they have to come and voice their opinions on these taxes. And so, yes, while we do have a process, when we bring up the same taxes every year for 5 straight years, and we have months of meetings, and you expect these business owners and community members to come to workshops and come to budget workshops, and it's a lot for a private individual who doesn't really understand what they're getting into with how many meetings it takes to be involved. And I've talked to a lot of community members who agree that the city's been out of line with the amount of taxes that they've tried to raise in the last few years, and they're burnt out from coming to meetings and fighting it. They feel like they're not listened to. We had a meeting, I think it was 2 years ago, the whole room was full. 90% of the audience spoke against the taxes, and we still passed them. And they got referred, they got voted down. So the community feels like they're not being listened to. They feel like they're not being represented. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. Obviously, this isn't going to go anywhere at this table, so we'll do a ballot initiative.
Further comments, council?
The last one. I guess I've actually had other community members voice just the opposite. They were happy with our alcohol tax. They were happy that we didn't have to raise property tax. And I know what you're saying is no tax, but again, we've got to fund the government to the best of our ability. So, and I think, well, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a lesson on those tax referendums, because what council had done is they're facing some kind of unanticipated challenges with state funding cuts at the same time as forest receipt shortfalls, and really trying to strike a balance between not drawing down a bunch of, reserves and trying to plot a path. So I actually went through a strategic planning process, mapped out a 3-year plan to, defer maintenance and cut expenses on the front end, and then, kind of downsize government a little bit, which they did, and pretty much held to that trajectory. However, there was lots of participation during the strategic planning process and a lot of input, and those were the taxes that kind of resulted. That's what all the people who had in public had commented up until that kind of February, March timeframe. We did have a couple new councilmen come on, but once they actually went into effect, then a whole new group of citizens come in and opposed them, and it just what it was. But I think the takeaway from the public comments and from council comments is that the one important element is transparency and, again, communicating not only what the proposed taxes are, but which services they're going to be funding, where the shortfalls are, and just, again, a little better communication and transparency. And I think council recognized that at the time of the referendums. And frankly, the last taxes, I think, were well communicated and were specifically allocated for harbor upgrades and renovations. And we're pretty, I personally heard very little negative feedback. But I also can't remember council having this kind of conversation. So I want to thank Mr. Deaton and Councilman Jones for putting this on the table for discussion, because it's one of those things that council should consider and discuss. So, got about 4 minutes. Let's make those available. Any further comments, Councilman Gard?
No, I know that it's a lot of work staying up on stuff, but without an educated electorate, no democracy is ever going to work. It's work, and I want to make it as easy for everybody as I can, but you need to be educated on what's happening with your government.
Move to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
But
Opposed?